Hi there everyone and welcome to Everything Wrong with the Saints Row reboot. So before anyone calls me a hater, I did a video about everything great about the reboot, so if you want to watch that, feel free to go ahead and watch it. It's pretty good actually, it's one of my favourite videos I've ever done. But today we're talking about things that quite frankly need to either be removed from the game, improved upon in the sequel, or just straight up completely redone. The reboot is not a perfect game by any means, and I think it's important that we assess things that do need to be changed so that the next game we have is more in our direction and what people would like. So, let's get into it. So, let's get started with what everyone is expecting me to talk about in this video, the story. The story of the Saints Row reboot makes zero sense, and quite frankly, it's not very good. That's not to say it doesn't have a few redeeming qualities, as I mentioned in my Everything Great About Saints Row, but here I need to talk about, quite frankly, the worst part about Saints Row. The story and everything wrong with it. So, starting off, the plot makes no sense. Spoiler alert, obviously. Nawali stabs the boss at the end because, what? He wants friends? But he already had the Saints. He wanted his own criminal empire? He was a part of the Saints, and even if he wanted to lead it, he had his old gang. He could have gone back to them and worked some sort of business arrangement out with the Saints. And what? He wanted to be friends with Nina, Eli, Kevin, but they were already friends. In fact, the boss was about to invite him to the party. So what, do we just write it off as Nawali was a maniac? But he showed no signs of it. Why did he betray the boss? To live his life? He had a very similar life alongside the boss. It makes no sense. And then with that alongside the enemy factions of the games, quite frankly having no weight to them, no explanation, and no depth, it's quite unexcusable in my books. I've been quite kind about everything to do with Saints Row, but this is the one thing I just don't like. It's an unbelievably short story with no real narrative. What do I gain from the reboot? You know, it had parts of the classic Saints Row formula. They start out as a little street gang and want to be something more. I can root for that. That's something I can get behind. But quite frankly, the plot made zero sense. It had no weight. Like, Los Panteros. What did we do to get rid of them? We robbed a train, they so happened to be there, and then the Nawali takes out Sergio? So what, that was the reward? That was the payoff? Where was the revenge for what happened to Nina's car? What, we get shoved to the side whilst the Nawali does it? Makes no sense. The idols, I couldn't even keep track of which ones I killed. I know I killed a couple in the story, but quite frankly, figuring out which ones I had killed and how far along the idol storyline confused the hell out of me. And then Marshall was by far the best. Marshall was the only gang I felt was sufficient. It did okay. You know, it wasn't any sort of super highlight for the series, but it was something I would consider decent enough, and I liked having the ending where I could choose what I want. Marshall should have been what the other gang should have been, and at the very least, if they could match Marshall's level of depth, it was at least something. You know, at least with Marshall, there was some payoff and reward. But with the other stuff, no, there really wasn't. And quite frankly, the boss battles, they were weird. And the best boss battle we had was the LARPing missions. It was the only one where there was an actual, like, payoff for what you did. It was very weird, and quite frankly, it was a bit of a letdown. The story, as I said in the other one, had great mission structure. The missions were fun. But what happened here, and what I think that the reboot falls victim to, is a very simple case of lack of time. The game needed time to set in. It needed time to build up this plot. Having a very short 5-hour story just doesn't cut it for this type of game. You know, the issue is, it had 25 missions that meant something. It needed 40. Give that game an extra 15 missions. Even if there are a couple filler missions, just explaining the gangs, and explaining Nawali's intentions. And that would be fantastic. But sadly, we didn't get that. So, it needed to be longer, it needed to have a more consistent plot, it needed to make more sense, and the enemy factions needed more screen on time. But that's not the only issue I have with the story. That was one. Moving past that, the humour. Now, look, I am very aware humour is subjective, and quite frankly, there were a couple moments in the game that made me chuckle. But it wasn't what the old games were. It didn't keep that same humour. Now, I don't mind this if there's at least a serious plot alongside it that I can get behind. But as I just discussed, the plot was all over the place. So this just added on wasn't great. If you're going to keep this humour, then offer something else. Because this humour in itself isn't bad, but by itself it just makes it stand out as cringe. And I understand cringe is subjective, but for me it just didn't land. But moving on past that, the characters, they were okay. They fit into this type of story, but again, there's no depth to them. All the stuff I learnt about these characters essentially came from, well, what I read leading up to the game, not what I learned inside the game. It felt like the game had so much cut content and so much depth behind these characters thrown to the side, and I hated it. It was such a wasted opportunity. And man, I can't lie, it just sucks knowing that these characters, even though I didn't hate them, I just didn't feel like I know them, and that's my biggest issue. With everything in this game, it felt so in the moment and temporary, and I just, at the end of it, didn't know what happened. And then let's talk about the final mission. Both the biggest highlight of the game and biggest lowlight. So, I'll quickly say the positive because I didn't put it in my other one. I liked that part of the mission where you're walking through that weird lake of water where it's really like pretty and sort of hard to explain, but it just looks really nice. And then they follow it up with a board game. I had just been stabbed. I've got to go and save my friends and get revenge on them. They took a really cool moment and what could have been a really good ending and put a board game in the middle where I go around collecting elephants and snails. It just doesn't hit for what Saints Row should be going for. This game was really inconsistent in its tone, because there are moments I cared about the characters and cared about what was going on, like when I got stabbed, at the start of the game when it's showing me being buried alive, when Nina's car got destroyed, and then there's weird ass moments where I'm getting Kevin a fucking toy from Freckle Bitches. I understand it's trying to be wacky and out there, but there's no real seriousness to the story. I don't know if I was supposed to just laugh at it the whole way along, but then with the humour, I couldn't even do that. I just found myself kind of having fun in the actual gameplay parts, but besides that, either cringing or disliking what was going on, besides a few moments. And that's not me trying to shit all over the story, that's me just trying to give some constructive feedback. I think that it needs to stick to its tone a bit more cohesively. I think it needs to be longer and have a lot more depth to the story. And now I don't know if this is because we've cut content or anything, but what needs to happen is the gangs need to be fleshed out, the tone needs to stay similar, it needs to be longer, the characters need more depth, that there just needs to be more. It's not that what we have is downright awful, it's just that what we have when it's by itself is downright awful. Sprinkle an extra 15 missions in between it and explain the motives of Noali, explain the enemy factions, explain why certain things are important. And that is what could build this Saints Row story into something great. Part of me hopes the DLC does something like this and kind of adds a bit more context. A Noali backstory, maybe the backstory of the game and the gangs. And I know that I'm nearly 10 minutes into the video just talking about the story. But man, it was such a letdown and wasted opportunity because the parts are there. They've got bits that I can agree with and can get on board with, and whether the tone is mine or not and whether I like it or not, it doesn't matter. If it was cohesive, I could respect it and enjoy it. But it just fell a bit short for me in both length, tone, and general plot. It just needed more depth to it, and that genuinely could have made all the difference. The next thing I'm going to talk about is the obvious one as well, the bugs and glitches. Now look, I'm not going to be the guy who pretends he cares about all these weird bugs and glitches. As long as they're not game breaking or generally irritating, I don't care. If it ruins my immersion, it ruins my immersion. If I get a chuckle out of it, I'm happy. But there are a few that kind of annoy me. So the ones I really think need to be fixed are, stuff like me clipping into walls and clipping into it, my guns disappearing randomly, my car not coming to me, NPCs kind of just freaking out and not doing the right thing, small things. And I won't hammer on bugs too much because I made a video on that. But the bugs are still very much there, and I think that this game may have just needed an extra 30 days in the oven. Part of me wishes this had a slightly longer delay, just an extra month. But I mean, if this stuff can be patched out, then you know what? Erase this point. If in a month or two they fixed it, then quite frankly, I don't care how it was on launch. I care about the product I will have, down the line, because truthfully, that's what I'm going to be playing. And it's not too bad on launch, but there are definitely bugs there, and I think it's a bit irritating from time to time. Okay, so next up, aircrafts. I don't know what has happened here, and I don't know if this is intentional or not, but it's unbelievably limited. Like, besides helicopters, there is one aircraft, a VTOL, at least from what I've played so far. And that's really disappointing, I can't lie. I understand there's no airport, so maybe having, certain aircrafts in the game, like planes, could be a bit difficult. I'm aware of that. And I hope that maybe in a DLC or something, they could add an airport. But at the very least, why isn't there stuff like hover bikes? And, why isn't there stuff like, the weird brooms and stuff? Saints Row is going to go for the more wackier approach. Then why not do it in this aspect, like maybe Saints Row 4 did, having a few different ones that aren't just your generic VTOL. Like the hover bike, again, from Saints Row 3, that would have been the perfect match for this game. Hell, we got something kind of like it with this weird boost bike, so why not get an aircraft version? And on top of that, flying controls don't feel very good, sadly. Flying around the map and navigating around the map, it just feels a bit stiffer, and you don't even get to use the bumpers to turn. They seem to have just messed with it, and it's not awful. Like, this is not, the worst thing in the world, but it's a sort of innovation I don't understand. Why change the flight controls when they were perfectly fine, and actually some of the best out there for flying aircraft? It's a little pet peeve of mine. Santo Ileso might be my favourite map in gaming currently. I absolutely love this vibrant, desert-fueled mad map. It's fantastic. But why no interiors? Now, I'm going to be a smart boy and imagine that this is some sort of engine limitation, because I don't think it's, any sort of effort to being lazy. I don't think they would just not do it. So maybe it's a budget limitation, maybe it's an engine limitation. But either way, there's certain things I feel and know they could definitely do that would make this better. So, at the very least, if you can't manage to put interiors inside of the map, normal and flush like previous games in the series, because of an engine or a budget limitation, that's fine. Add warp points. I know you can do this because of stuff like the elevator, to get to the top of buildings. Do a very similar thing where it just transports you into, mission interiors. Why not go to the casino area where the Noali is and just kind of go and mess around in that interior? It's something I think they could definitely do. It's a bit disappointing, especially to see that some interiors that are fully rendered and do fit flush, for example at the gas station where the LARPing mission is, it just goes wasted. Like, they just block it up and you can see inside, you can see you can get in there, like RPG mentioned, but they just block it off, and it's just a tad bit disappointing to me. This map is really good, and I think with some added depth and perhaps even this little hotfix they could do, I think people would appreciate it more. I'm not, again, going to sit here and trash the map. I love Santo Ileso. It's fantastic, and even in its current state, I love it. But I do think that, maybe opening up some interiors could definitely just give it a much needed boost to its liveliness, and maybe stop the complaints of people calling it soulless. The streets also seem to be quite barren. It's something I don't like. I'm not going to pretend it's the biggest issue in the world again. I don't mind it that much. I think that with the kind of vibe of the game, at least for me, it makes sense in a way. I kind of like that it's just deserted, empty streets, because I like the style of the map, and I don't know, maybe it goes well for me, but for a lot of people, they wanted a few more NPCs in the game, and I can understand it. I think that this is pretty simple to do, just up the ped density. I'm not sure if this maybe is an old gen limitation, but at least on next gen, surely you could add a couple more peds just per street. Even if you can't, match what you did previously, a slight improvement is an improvement. And, with current hardware, it should be something that's possible to do. So I think that could be a quick improvement that could be made in perhaps any sort of content patches if they ever decide to do it. Layered clothing made its grand return, and quite frankly, for the most part, I like it. I will say, however, not having style options for how you want to wear your clothes is a bit of a disappointment. If I have a cap, why can't I simply just turn it backwards? I know that there are models for backwards caps, so it just kind of, I don't understand why we can't do that with all caps. Maybe it's a sort of rendering issue, maybe it's something we just physically can't do. But I feel like having perhaps style options return would definitely be quite nice. I mean, it was in Saints Row 1 and 2, and I know that those games kind of had it be the forefront of character customization. You could wear them however you want. You know, you can have saggier pants, or you can have, you know, ones that are tucked in. You could do pretty much anything, and I feel like that coming back could definitely be a big enhancement to customization. Speaking of customization enhancements, again, I like customization for the most part. I do feel that, you know, maybe a few longer hairstyles and face customization needs to be improved. Again, the customization for the most part is really good. I genuinely love the customization, but we're missing a few features that were in previous installments. You know, there's certain face options that just aren't here anymore, and it's a little bit disappointing. I know it's something that can definitely be done, so I'm hoping that perhaps in a sequel we could get these enhancements. You know, stuff like pitch filters as well. That going, surely that would be as simple as just an overlay effect. I mean, I can change my pitch in this very cheap editor I have. So, I'm not sure how they could do it, but I feel like having pitch options would be really cool also. So, one crib was also a bit of a bummer. Again, it's not the biggest issue in the world, but mixed with the lack of interiors, man, it just makes the map, again, feel a little bit put to waste. Now, what I will say here, is with Saints Row 1 and Saints Row 2, Saints Row 1 had a very base Stillwater, further improved by Saints Row 2. It made the map better in pretty much every way, besides perhaps the colour palette, which again is a big pet peeve I have normally. This could definitely happen with Santo Ileso. You know, get rid of these small shopping stands and, you know, add more interiors. Get rid of the one crib we have and add a few more. I mean, the apartment, for example, which we have in the start of the game, shuts up the second, we get the church, and it's a bit disappointing. Now, you can go there to the apartment if you know where it is on the map and walk inside and access all the stuff, but they just unmark it. So it's like, again, another wasted opportunity. Another thing, somewhere in the church, I can't remember, there's a door that takes you to a hidden interior. Once again, why isn't this something that's marked? You know, so essentially there's 3 cribs, but you only see one. And I mean, the Saints Tower is not really a crib, but I guess it's something else, so, you know, it's a case of what we have here is okay, but mark it out a bit more. Make it a bit clear that what we have. I mean, there's a wasted interior in the church. I mean, the Saints Tower, whilst not being a very good crib, you have access to all your crib-like things, so I guess it's something. The apartment, again, is a completely fully done crib, so it's like, why isn't this, again, accessible for the entire game? And then there's the church, which is the only one that seems to be done correctly here. Something I just wish was changed. Another pet peeve I have is the city of Santo Ileso. Again, fantastic. So I've taken over all the districts, let's say, when I finish the game. I own Santo Ileso. Belongs to the Saints. Badass, yeah? So where are they? There's not a single one in sight. I have just taken over a fucking city. In every other Saints Row, there are the Saints walking the streets. The Saints cars patrolling. I got my boys to back me up. Not in this game. And it's a small change. It's a small thing. I'm not going to act like it's the biggest difference in the world, but once again, it just adds to adding less weight to the things we do in the game. Small change, I know, not the biggest deal. Just a bit disappointing. But again, speaking about these Saints, I can't recruit them? Why did that feature go? I mean, I don't mind having, the main Saints be the only people we can call in, but it's just like, it's a blatant downgrade. With all the new hardware we have, surely that's something that could be at least added in the future. I don't think we should have to wait till a sequel just to recruit some Saints, which are already fully rendered and available to have in combat, as we can call them with an ability. There's the circle things that show we're there. Why not just add a Saints logo there and have them, go in with us? The cam wrap is a huge innovation in Saints Row. Personally, something I'm super appreciative of. It makes getting thumbnails so much easier. It makes getting gameplay so much smoother, and I love it, man. Great enhancement. Has to be in the game. Few pet peeves, though. Number 1, why can't I flip it onto my boss? I mean, that would make thumbnails even cooler. Watch Dogs 2 had this, and I'm not sure how Saints Row could do it, but it seems like something that's completely possible. I doubt it would be that hard, even if it looks a bit weird. I think having a camera that could, maybe go in front of the boss and show off your character would be really cool. And it's a small enhancement again, but it's something I would quite like. And also maybe some filters and stuff to mess around with in the camera. I'm just thinking about what could be added to the camera to make it a bit more fun, but already it's pretty decent, but those are a couple things I think could be added. When playing through the Criminal Ventures, you unlock multiple vehicles, specifically for the food truck delivery thing. You get all the vans. Now, that would usually be okay, but why can't I get rid of them? I have like 3 cars I use, right? And they're all sorted in this weird order, so I'm going through just a ton of vehicles that I don't want in my garage, just to get to the car I want to get out. Small change, but simply just add the remove feature. Even if they go to some weird sort of menu where you can get them back at a later date, or at least add more than one favorite, add a favorites menu maybe, so I can favorite multiple cars, just so I can see the ones I want and not these weird ones that are kind of just there. That to me seems like something I would much prefer over the current system of just having a huge list of cars that I don't want. This can also be the same for some sort of weapons and customization options you get in the game. There's a lot of clothing I didn't necessarily want. There's a lot of weird visual mods that perhaps I didn't want. At least with visual mods you can kind of ignore them because you don't change it too much. You have your set of guns and that's pretty much what you mess with. With stuff like customization options for your character and vehicles in general, it's something I think can definitely be changed. Criminal Ventures, I touched upon very briefly in my last video, and I said that most of what I have to say about Criminal Ventures will probably end up here, and sadly that still is the exact same for me. A lot of them are just tedious. Take your car here, drive here, repo this from here to here, go here, kill these, go here, do this, and it's quite disappointing, sadly. And a big pet peeve of mine is just this very basic repetitive gameplay. Now, at least in earlier Saints Rows, the most of the bad activities you had were for what, a maximum of 6 levels? At least in Saints Row 3, I think it was like 3, you had easy, medium, hard, right? In this game, you can have upwards of 14. That's ridiculous. Now, I will admit, some of them are good. I like a good amount of them. One I forgot to touch up on is the laundromat. That was a good one in the previous one. I really enjoyed that one. But a lot of the ones like the toxic waste disposal is just unbelievably boring. And I hate saying that because I can see that, it was supposed to be fun, but it just feels like a lot of copy-paste went into it, and for me, it just doesn't quite hit like I'd want it to. On top of that, Criminal Ventures, there's just too many of them. I don't mind, having, say, 6, 7 different type of activities, but there's like 12 different activities, and I'd say 50% of them, again, are just this, go here, do that. I'd rather them cut down the amount we have and, keep it kind of low, instead of having a crazy amount of them and then have some of them just be completely recycled. I mean, I wonder how many Criminal Ventures can you play through where you don't need to just get your car and drive long distances. Someone work that out, because to me that's a lot of the gameplay, just going around driving, and it's not necessarily bad on its own, but when you have to do it for nearly 50, 60 activities in total, it's just ridiculous. Melee and hand-to-hand combat feels really weird in this game. I don't know what exactly is different, but it feels like there's no weight to my punches. I can never even tell if my punches have landed, and they are just really weak in general. All the melee in the game just needs a damage boost of like twice the amount. Like, it really just needs to be doubled, because whenever I punch someone, they literally just like brush it off like nothing happened. There's no real weight to my attacks, and it feels like when I'm hitting them, I'm not doing anything. I'm nothing substantial is happening, and it just doesn't really feel right for me, especially compared to like previous games. On the point of, combat feeling weird, aiming in this game feels really odd. I don't know what's different again, but I know for a fact that the dead zone being set to 30 by default is crazily high. There's also aim acceleration, which I just don't like. I think it makes games feel really bad, and a lot of the time it feels like I just don't have much control over really where I'm aiming and shooting. And sometimes it feels like turning right is slower than turning left, and then turning left is faster. It's so weird. Like, I don't know how to exactly describe it, but it just feels like the aim acceleration, the default sensitivity, the dead zone, and also just the way turning feels is just not quite how I would like it. Dynamic weather for the most part is something I really like. I love the idea of having different weathers depending on what I'm doing, and the fact that a dust storm could come at any point is really cool to me. However, I can't help but feel that in this game, it could have been executed just a tad bit better. Now, like I said, for the most part I like it, it's not awful, but it does make the game somewhat unplayable for like 5 minutes, and I understand that it's so temporary that it's not that big a deal, and it's supposed to just be this really cool phenomenon that just comes out of nowhere, but I can't help but just feel having dust all over your screen and not being able to drive to your objective or do anything, it kind of interferes with the gameplay and it makes it less fun than it could be. It's something that, again, is a small issue, and like I said, for the most part, I think having dynamic weather is unbelievably cool, a great enhancement to the game, but I think it could have just been executed a tad bit better, and having a few more other weathers would also have been cool. I like the fog, I like the dust storms, but besides that, that's pretty much it. I feel like having some cooler ones would definitely be something I appreciate in general. Now, I'm not going to lie, I don't know whether this is a glitch or whether it's a design feature, but either way, I don't like it and I think it needs to be kind of fixed up. The train in this game just pushes you out of the way. It really adds such a little weight to the train, and I thought that it was a really cool idea of having, moving parts of the map, something that perhaps we missed in the later games, and it's kind of returning from the previous. But I can't lie, it's very disappointing when I, put my car on the tracks, or I stand on the tracks, just for the train to hit me and gently brush me to the side instead of doing something really cool like the previous games. It's just a little underwhelming, a little disappointing, and it's something that I think can easily be fixed. I just don't like the idea that I can just run at a train and all that will happen is I get pushed out of the way. Also, jumping on it is incredibly difficult. Unless you ramp off something, you can't mantle it, you can't climb it. It's just a bit, again, disappointing. Why can't I climb the train and have some cool shenanigans that? It's a little barrier that's just stopping the fun. All that needs to happen is for it to be lowered a little, so we can jump on it, or at least just have a climbing thing where I can jump on it, like GTA does, where even if it's moving really fast, you can still climb up on it. I think that would make all the difference, and especially when you're on the train, even if you get on it, you still can't climb up to the higher parts and lower parts, and it stops the fun for me, and it's something I wish could be fixed, and I know it's an easy fix as well, so I hope it's something that eventually gets done. We're missing quite a few features of the key Saints Row formula that I wish would just come back, and these are things that I actually think could be added in perhaps any sort of content updates if they decide to do that. So first of all, streaking isn't in the game. A very small thing that you could activate in pretty much every Saints Row is now just gone. It's a really small design choice, but I don't know why when it was quite a fun activity. You can't vehicle surf. Another thing that was in every Saints Row has now just magically disappeared, and it's just a bit confusing to me. Even in a game with superpowers, you can surf on the vehicles, so why can't we in the reboot? Expand it, we could have made it even cooler, you could have had challenges. In Saints Row 2 you get the traffic cone when you've done it for a certain amount. Why not have similar things like that in a game with the best customization? It's something that can easily just detract from the overall feeling. We can't commit robberies anymore. Small thing, but Saints Row 1 did it fantastically. I really liked Saints Row 1's robbery system, so why can't we do it in this game? It's just a little bit disappointing again, and I really wish it was something they would just think about bringing back. And again, another thing that went was cheats. I understand that cheats was something they were debating having in the game or not, but having nothing at all is a bit disappointing. I hope in the future they can add it back, because I think it's something people would really appreciate. The AI of NPCs is unbelievably wild, both enemy and just generic NPCs walking down the street. It's a little bit annoying, I can't lie, as the game's really good for the most part when it comes to combat. I think it flows quite well. However, having NPCs just randomly stand there and not really move, it's just a bit disappointing. There's one thing I did a while ago. I don't have any video footage, sadly, but I was in the Marshall base and I had caused a bit of a destruction, and I literally turned the corner and there were like 50 enemies all just stuck together trying to shoot me, not moving an inch, and it was just really disappointing. Why aren't they surrounding me? Why aren't some rushing, some falling back? It's a modern game, and I think the AI can just be improved a little bit, and that goes the same with NPCs as well. When you're walking down the street, they kind of just stand there. I think, obviously, not to be that the Saints Row 2 was better, guy, but I think Saints Row 2 had the best AI when it comes to this, and it's something that can be improved upon immensely in perhaps either a sequel or an update. Something I wish would come back that didn't in this game, and I feel like it definitely had its place here, especially with all of the branding around the map. food. Why can't I eat? Why can't I smoke? Why can't I drink? Why can't I do these very small things that made the old Saints Row games great? This game seems to have so much like potential, and it's already a good game. I like it, like I said, but I think small little wasted opportunities with things like this disappoint me a little bit. I mean, fight styles. Why didn't that return? You know, there's certain small features about the game that I just think need to be added. Again, if I could recommend something for Volition to do here, and this might be really stupid, go through all of, the previous games, the favorite game being Saints Row 2, feature-wise. I'm not talking concept, I'm not talking tone or anything, just look at the features it had, and see which ones are people's favorites, and see which ones you can bring back. I mean, stuff like robberies going is just completely wild to me, and then stuff like food not coming back to heal health, especially in a game where we have this weird health system, that the game has, it's just a little bit disappointing to me. I feel like this game could have been so much cooler if we had certain foods that gave us buffs and certain drinks that gave us buffs. Maybe look at how Sleeping Dogs did it. That was really cool. You could walk around to these weird like thingies and have a buff for 30 minutes, and I don't know. I think it's something that could, maybe just improve this formula of Saints Row we have. Again, not the biggest deal, but something I just wish would happen. Having wildlife in the desert is such a huge bonus for this game. I absolutely love it. One of the best innovations the new game has for me personally. Maybe I'm just a bit of a nerd for this stuff, but I really like how it adds to the game as a whole, and for me, I think it's just a huge bonus. However, I think it could be improved. If I could give a few, suggestions and recommendations, why aren't there dogs walking down the street? That seems like something that could be easily coded and, done. I mean, Snickerdoodle, for example, I couldn't find him in the HQ whatsoever. It was just a bit disappointing. We have a decent bit of wildlife in the desert, and again, it's a huge bonus. Seeing birds, seeing coyotes, stuff like that really gets me excited for what the future could hold for Saints Row. I would just personally like to see this expanded upon. This isn't me, saying it's a bad thing and needs to be removed. This is, again, one of those, it just needs to be improved in future sequels or perhaps content updates. I really like it, and it's definitely a huge new thing for Saints Row, and I just feel it's something they should definitely think about doing more in the future. I think that's going to do it for what I want to mention in this video. This video is nearly half an hour. It probably is going to be half an hour by the end of this if I think of any extra. And I want to just say, again, I'm not trying to shit on Volition here. Again, and I want to state this so confidently, I like the new game. I think it's decent. It's a really fun game, and I had a blast with it playing it. And, I've praised it indefinitely, and I will praise it. I think it's a decent game. However, there are just some things that I didn't like, and I think can be improved upon. It's all about getting to this game eventually in the future that is near perfect. It's all about giving them nods in the right direction to try and get them to a point where they can make a game that pleases everyone. And, it's not an easy task, and it's something that takes a lot of trial and error. But with these nods in the right direction, I feel like Volition will be able to innovate in the right direction also, and just know what to do for the future. So I think, wholeheartedly, if they were to improve on most of the features I stated in this video, the game would be received a whole lot better. A lot of what they did was right, it was just surrounded by a few things they did were wrong, and that's what this video is. It was just me stating what I think could be improved upon in the future to make the game a better game. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you did enjoy. If you did, leave a like, comment, subscribe. I hope you have been enjoying these longer style of videos. I'm only going to be doing it for these two. Maybe I'll do some more in the future if you prefer it. I don't mind. It's not that much more effort to make these, just a bit more editing goes into it. So let me know. Is the long style of content more for you or not? I don't mind. But again, thank you for watching. I'll see you soon, guys. Peace. Before I go, I did also want to just say, I hope this helps people understand that when I praise Saints Row, I don't think it's perfect, and at the same time, I'm trying everything I can to make this game the best game it possibly can be. Sorry for saying quite weird right now, I'm not exactly in my normal setup. But I want to just say, a lot of people like to call me this blind fanboy who doesn't understand why people dislike Saints Row. I get it, I just don't agree. I like the game, I honestly do. But I do think there are issues, and I think that, both the people who like the game and hate the game should come together and try and, push for a better Saints Row in general. I've made a video about everything I like in Saints Row, the features that are good and I think do please people, and this is just kind of the opposite of that, so that in a sequel they can consider adding and removing certain things to counter what people dislike, and then again get that good game. So when people call me a shill or a fanboy and stuff, it's always quite amusing, because it's It's not true. Like, I am okay, maybe I am a bit of a fanboy of Saints Row, but like, I grew up on it, man. I like the games, so what? But really, I just want to push for this game to be the best it possibly can be. You know, I want the game to be the best Saints Row ever. That's what everyone wants with every new release of their favorite franchise. And with me, I think if I can, you know, give like hints and pointers in the right direction, hopefully one day we will get the best ever Saints Row. And you know, this game is not a bad basis to start from. It did a lot of things right, and obviously I have to tell them what they did right and what they did wrong, because again, as I said, in the future they may use stuff like this to kind of make the next game, you know, improve upon it. But a lot of people, like I said, like to attack me for like saying good things about the game, and it's like, guys, come on, you're telling me there's not a single good thing about Saints Row? It's like, people are way too overreactive with this stuff. It's either 100% negative or 100% positive, and there is no in between, which just isn't true when it comes to game design. Like, there is a middle ground. They didn't do everything wrong. There are a few good points, and I think when Zilla said it was a mixed bag, I agree. Although I may not agree on the percentage of mix or the score I'm giving it as my final thingy. I'm again averaging about a 6.5 to a 7, but at the very least I can agree that there are good points and there are bad points, and if we can kind of clearly state what these good and bad points are, it will help the devs in the future make the best game ever. So, you know, the people out there that are like, man, I hate Saints Row, I hope it to fail, it's like, yeah, well, you're never going to get the game you want because of that. You need to play the game, find out what you like and dislike, and then, you know, move forward and give actual criticism and, you know, good advice. Like, saying it's not like Saints Row 2 isn't as helpful as, you know, listing off what's good and bad. So, you know, that's what this video kind of served as. It was just kind of like a non-hater, genuine criticisms of the Saints Row, like criticisms from the point of view of a Saints Row fan, not a Saints Row fucking hate train rider. And I hope it came across as that. And again, I mean no disrespect to anyone who made the game or anyone who enjoys the game with this video. In the same way, I meant no disrespect previously to anyone who hates the game by saying what was good in my last video. At the end of the day, we all want to come together to enjoy Saints Row as much as possible, and whether you do or don't, I hope this video kind of explains my position on it. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. I will catch you in the next one. Peace, guys.